So let me talk about the midterm exam now, okay? It's a set of multiple choice questions, true, false, which you would possibly ask, well, why do we do that in ethics, where ethics is not black and white? Well, I do take that into account when I grade it. The test itself basically shows me that you have worked with the book and know the terms. That's really all it's about. It doesn't tell me anything whether you're a good person or know what it means to be a happy or good person. Nothing. So when you answer the questions, keep in mind to answer from the perspective of the book. If you disagree with the perspective of the book, which I do in a lot of parts, and ethics is the science of disagreement, we invite disagreement. We invite a critical mind. Just make a footnote, a star, and write at the end, I really do not agree with this position of the book, but I marked it as right because that's what the book would do. But I disagree because of so and so. I will read that. I will give you credit for it. And I invite that kind of a differing view, especially when it comes to evaluation of the Bible. Many people have a very different idea than she has in that book. And that's fine. Again, I am grading all your essays. I hope you have seen that, not from my perspective. Especially when I disagree with something, I'm much more careful to make sure the student has made a good argument. I disagree, but that has nothing to do with it. It's still a good grade. You know, the point is that you make a good argument. Yeah.
How many questions are on the exam?
There are about 35 questions and a few essay questions. Okay. So first of all, then follow what the book says. Secondly, okay, a few direct terms. Discourse. What is discourse? The Greeks used the term discourse for a systematic approach to solving a problem or a dilemma. A systematic approach, that's important. One can solve, as I said before, a dilemma in a different way. A non-systematic approach would be the one, for instance, the Bible uses. The Bible tells you Christ told people a story when they said, when the Pharisees came up and said, look at this coin. On one side there's the Caesar's picture, and on another side there's God's picture. What Christ tells them a story rather than giving a direct answer. And that narrative approach is a very popular one for ethics. This is how we today look at non-Western ethics. African tribes, India, Buddhism, everywhere you look, they developed an ethical way of behaving, mostly by telling stories. The positive aspect of telling stories is that you can change them and adjust them for new times. When the world, when history, when human beings change, a story can be readjusted, reinterpreted. Where the discourse approach the Greeks used is much narrower in its interpretation. And therefore, it is more used for dominator thinking than for what I call partnership thinking. And even in philosophy, the discourse approach is neglected since the last 2 centuries. The Danish philosopher Kierkegaard, existentialist, was the first one who used stories to make a point rather than making the point like a mathematician would do. Okay. I mentioned already that the Greeks explained the world contradiction-free. They thought there shouldn't be a contradiction, and ultimately there is no contradiction. We should get rid of contradiction by eliminating them. And so eventually the world will be contradiction-free. That is still today the approach of science, to an extent. A scientist, when a scientist can't solve something, the last thing a scientist would say is, well, it can't be solved, because that's how the world is made. The scientist would say, well, I might not understand it yet, but tomorrow we'll try. We'll get a solution. That's still how science works. What would be an a priori statement? Obviously, there's a lot more to talk about, and I'm probably overloading you guys. A priori.
It's based on truth.
Yeah. Yeah, it's got to have something to do with true. It is true in your mind. Actually, it is in your mind. It's similar to innate. Your mind figures it out without having experienced it. A priori means from before. It's really a response to the empiricists, empirical philosophy. What is empirical philosophy? Philosophy based only on experience and sense experience as that. Everything I know comes through my senses into my mind. That's what the empiricists said. My soul, my mind is tabula rasa, an empty slate when it is born. Again, that's empirical philosophy. The rationalists said, there are things my mind can do that I can never experience, like finishing that pyramid. It comes from somewhere. Plato said it was in my soul. No modern person would say that. But still modern people would say that there are operations in my mind that my mind can do, and I cannot say that I ever experienced them. And those are a priori operations. That my mind knows more than what my mind can experience. What's tolerance? It's an easy one. Tolerance. Who wants to try? You guys are tired, huh? Long day at work. Tolerance. Latin, it means suffering the other. Suffering the other. So we have made it a little nicer. Say, accepting the other. I would say we should go much beyond tolerance. Tolerance is a good first step to accept the other, appreciate the other, realizing that that's what makes nature beautiful. Variety, multiplicity, many different things. This is the problem with our logical Western mind. We have eliminated differences because we saw no purpose for them. And we thought we could figure it all out because God gave us this incredible power. So we have eliminated, we still today eliminate, I don't know how many species from the surface of the earth forever as we cut down rainforests. We eliminate. And then we replant those beautiful forests with monocultures. And then the first storm just kicks them over, or the first fire kills them all. Where in a rainforest, the fire does not do much harm. It's actually a necessity. So that's how we have tolerated the other more or less. In Bosnia, people have shown how they didn't tolerate the other. Same thing in Germany. Same thing maybe in Japanese internment camps during World War II here. So to appreciate, to celebrate the other, I think would be a better approach. I think basically what you want to do then is go through the book, those first 2 chapters, underline every term you don't know. You have the glossary in the back. Refer to that. All the terms are explained. Finally, I want to come then to a conclusion. Ethical egoism is a position. Altruism is the opposite of ethical egoism. Being for others. And in my own philosophy, perspectivism, I have developed that in a much greater way, that we actually, I call it a shamanistic philosophy, that we actually have to relearn to look through the eyes of others. Art helps us doing that. Role-playing. Role-playing is often used as an educational tool. Theater in general, art in general, makes us look through the eyes of others. Deontological thinking, very good. We have basically 2 schools of ethics. One that acts by principle, and the other that acts by consequence. Deontological thinking, deontological ethics, is all ethics that looks at a principle and says, I have to act in a certain way because I'm holding this for true, this principle for true. Deon is the Greek word for duty. I'm doing my duty. Now, there are different ways how I arrive at that principle. I can have that given to me by God. I can have that reasoned out like Kant, the philosopher, did. Different ways. But in any case, I'm acting by principle regardless of what the outcome is. Even if it costs my life, I will never lie. That's deontological. Most people act in a mixture of the two. They look partially at the consequences, and that was the critique of Kant's deontological categorical imperative. In his categorical imperative, he said, you should always act as if the result of your action, or you looked at the consequences, could, if that would become general law for everybody, would then be that a happy society to live in. So it was, in a way, a mixture. But once you have that principle, then you act according to that. And therefore, Kant is a deontological thinker or ethicist. Today, we tend much more towards consequentialist ethics. Utilitarian ethics is inherently, it's a subgroup of consequentialist ethics. In terms of consequences, we would, as an egoist, we would first just ask, well, what does it do to me? Then we are an ethical egoist who is consequentialist. Some people don't think anything, like our rapist in extremities. He just goes for it. Utilitarian thinking then says, no, ultimately it will come back to you if you only think of yourself. In order to get the best out of it for yourself, you think of others, and it will be a cycle that will come back to you. So utilitarian thinking is based on the idea to create the best possible solution for the highest amount of people. And that is basically our public policy in the United States. When we look at making laws, making public policy, we try to create, we don't assume that we will satisfy everybody, but we try to create the situation that gives the most for the most amount of people. Any other questions? I saw another hand up.
Well, I wanted to ask about the essays.
Yeah.
never really explained what would be on there. Is it pretty much just the same thing? With
Yeah,
the
they follow the lines of the films of the essays you did in the homework, and the final test is all essay. You can choose which film you want to talk about. So it really is for me only a proof that it's you, because the testing lab checks your ID and that you actually are doing the work. You know. Okay. Okay. Then thank you again.